The following marketing information and discussion is provided for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as professional guidance or consultancy. You should find an agency for that. Comexis is a digital marketing agency, so feel free to hire us, but otherwise, just enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to The Buyer's Journey by Comexis, a discussion-based podcast on the ever-changing marketing landscape. I'm Matthew McGroarty, the social media content producer here at Comexis.
I am Len Ward, the managing partner at Comexis.
And I'm Josh Lyons, the digital marketing coordinator here at Comexis.
So today we're talking about a story that was kind of been a big story the last couple weeks following a report, a big write-up by Fishkin on SparkToro that basically was trying to sort of answer some of the questions regarding Google's search traffic. In particular, in December 2018, Google CEO Sundar Pichai was asked a set of questions by U.S. Congress, and his answers were not particularly insightful or data-driven, I guess, depending on your viewpoint on it. So Fishkin was able to get some data from clickstream data provider JumpShot and wrote this big piece on SparkToro. There will be links in the description, and there's also going to be there's a lot of graphs in here, so we'll be talking about them, but also they will be in our blog as well as linked to SparkToro. So the questions that Sundar Pichai was asked, there were basically three main questions. So the first is, what percentage of those search engine results page resulted in the user terminating their search because they were satisfied by the answer? B, clicking on a link which led to the user to a web page not hosted on google.com, and C, clicking on a link which led to the user being sent to a secondary page on google.com and any of the Google's top-level domains or generating another search engine result on Google. So of course we're talking about search engine optimization through a lot of this because a lot of it is Google searches. So before I get to what Google's answer were to those questions, Len, can you just give me a tidbit of why search engine optimization is important?
Sure. So search engine optimization is important because it's a long-held theory that SEO is going to be driving the majority of the traffic to your website, and that was true up until I think over the last couple of years, people really started questioning whether SEO was driving traffic to the website. Now, the majority of people listening to this podcast and the majority of people listening or reading this report, SEO is still driving a lot of traffic to your website. The problem is that there's a lot of issues in agencies right now where clients are complaining about rankings, they're complaining about traffic, and they want to know exactly what's going on with the SEO. If you've really been following SEO, I've been doing SEO for the better part of 15, almost 20 years now. I've noticed that there's been a pullback in SEO, and no matter what you're doing anymore, you're not gaining traffic. It's almost like you're just trying to stop the water from coming in, realizing that the eventual end game is that it's pulling all the way back. But it's very important because the crux of it is that 95% of searches start at a search engine. So when people are thinking about something, they're in the consideration phase and they're identifying something that they want or a pain point they're trying to solve. They're grabbing their phone 80% of the time, 20% of the time, they're maybe going to sit down at their desktop and they're going to Google and they're searching for something. So you would immediately think, well, I have to absolutely have an SEO campaign. So that is why, I'll kind of let you take over from here. That is why you would think search engine optimization would be a very important metric of marketing. But by the end of this podcast, you're going to realize that SEO doesn't hold the value that it used to hold.
Yeah. So Google answered these questions basically by saying, I'll just read it straight from the quote. Google doesn't necessarily know why users terminate a search. Some users may be dissatisfied by the answers. Others may have found what they needed. For example, a user who searched for weather may be satisfied by the information provided at the top of the search result. And some may have realized that a different search query is more likely to help them find the result they are looking for. Whatever the reason, we understand that providing users with the most useful and accurate information is the reason they'll come back to use our search engine again. We will continue to work hard to fulfill our mission. And the reason that this is kind of an unsatisfying answer is because they were asked percentages of actual hard numbers, and they basically gave a very general answer to this question, which Fishkin took issue with. So in his report, he points out that according to JumpShot, in Q1 2019, Google's U.S. web search engine received 150 plus billion searches, solved 48.96% of those searches without a click, sent 7.2% of all search clicks to paid results, sent 6.01% of all searches, which is about 12% of search clicks, to websites owned by Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, and directed a click to non-Alphabet owned websites, aka literally everything else, after 45.03% of queries. So while Fishkin points out that these answers are obviously not perfect answers to the questions asked by United States Congress, they are much harder in numbers and actual statistics to sort of prove the point that they basically just to give a better answer, right? And Fishkin points out that he has a chart of what happens after searchers performed a browser-based query on Google.com in the last US quarter. This chart is obviously on the SparkToro thing. It will also be in our blog. And it is a massive pie graph basically showing 48.96% of searches are zero-click searches, 41.45% were organic clicks done on Google sites, 3.58 were paid clicks done on Google sites, and 5.9% were organic clicks to Google sites. Oh, and there's also a very small percentage of paid clicks to Google sites. And Google sites include Google Maps, Google News, any domain that's on Google Store, Chrome, blogs, analytics, Google Drive, Google Images, basically anything you think that Google or Alphabet owns, that is considered a Google site, and there's tons of them. So Waze, for example, if you don't know, Waze was bought by Google. Anything involving Waymo, Nest.com, Blogger.com, ThinkWithGoogle.com, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole list. It'll be in the blog description. It's in the SparkToro piece as well. And the data tells Fishkin that 6% of all searches, which is 12% of all clicks, end in a click from Google right back to Google, which is a big red flag. So that's just some preliminary numbers at the moment. Len, do you want to dive in and give your thoughts on this?
All right. So I think the number one thing you have to understand is that according to Jump Shot's estimate, 75.6 billion organic searches came through in 2016. In 2019, Google has sent 20% fewer organic clicks via browser than they did in 2016. That's a 20% drop in organic traffic. No matter what you're doing on your SEO campaign, it doesn't matter. You can optimize it until you're blue in the face. You can do all the backlinks, rewrite the metadata. You have to understand that the pie of trying to obtain organic traffic is reducing. But there's other numbers that you really want to look into, and these are really, really important numbers, especially if you are a company who is tip of the spear leading the way with SEO. I have said it 1,000,001 times. You have got to stop that mentality. It doesn't work. It's a mentality that, in my opinion, could literally hinder your company going forward. And there are quite a few companies that we have come in touch with where they want to lead the tip of the spear with SEO, and it's become a problem. And here's the numbers that are really concerning to me, is that if you factor in all the numbers you said about 150 billion searches coming through, solve 49% without a click, think about that. That's nearly 50% of all traffic. They don't even click anything. There's nothing being clicked. So really, you can take 50% and throw it out the window on all the search traffic that Google's telling you that they're sending. Then they're telling you 7.2% of paid results. I actually think that's a little high. I tend to think that the number tends to be closer to 3 to 5% based upon what our clients are spending. But when you boil all of it in, there's 39% left for SEO that you could potentially rank for. Now, let's go drill it down even a little deeper. And this is where I'm kind of on the opposite side of where Rand Fishkin is. And I'm a big fan of Rand Fishkin. Really liked his book. Always was a fan of Moz. But SEO is in dire trouble. A lot of the SEO people that I've been following and I look at on Twitter are saying, no, it's fine, it's fine. No, it's not fine. Because if there's only 39% of traffic left, of that 39% of organic traffic that could be clickable, that's non-Google properties, how many of them are aggregate sites? Things like Yelp, things like whatever it may be, certain types of FindLaw type sites, like directory type sites. So what does that number really become on the first page of Google? 20%, 22%? So if you have a company who's investing $2 million a year and $1.5 million of that is going to this big massive SEO campaign, the reality of the situation is you can only maybe get 20, at best 39% of organic traffic. So, the things to me is that this is something where it's, if I have to have kind of think about initial thoughts as to where I am right now, and I actually wrote some stuff down because this is, to me, this is some of the largest news that's come out of the SEO community in a long, long time. I know people want to say Panda and Penguin and all the Google updates. No, this is dramatic because this has finally shined a light on Google and on organic search and where we are right now, and it's clearly showing you that you need to have more skin in the game regarding paid. So some of the thoughts I kind of thought about, as I looked at this, is you have to understand the new baseline traffic you can potentially get for your website on SEO. Baseline should be 39 to 40% of the traffic coming into your website should be coming in via organic SEO. That's if you're doing it right. Now, if you're really kicking ass, yeah, you could get up to 50, 60%, but the reality is you should be happy at, right around 40%. This does not include maps and videos and things like that. So that's where that other 12% of Google properties, you would have to be actively engaged in a map listing, image optimization to gain more traffic. If you're going to try to benefit off of the no-click SEO, which is what you need to do, you really need to embrace rich snippets. You really need to have kick-ass metadata that almost gives answers. Put your phone number in there, maybe put your business location in there. If you don't have the right schema code. Make sure you have the right markup on your pages all over the site. So you can potentially grab some of that 50% of traffic, but you understand that it's almost going to be non-trackable unless you're putting a call rail number, within your metadata, or you're putting something in there with which somebody's contacting you and they saw this on a Google search. I'm kind of getting in the weeds a little bit, but that's something else. But at the end of the day, this comes back to what I told you guys a while ago. Remember when I told you and we talked about Google's numbers and they weren't hitting their numbers on pay-per-click? Now you see when these reports come out, where does the money come now? Where does it go? It goes to pay-per-click, which means Google's now going to report good numbers. Once you understand the fundamentals of business and how it intertwines more and more with SEO, you then understand that SEO is just a big business game. Adding links, writing metadata, and having all the greatest content in the world, it's these things where I think we have to gather around a table and understand that this to me reinforces more than ever the buyer's journey that we embrace at Comexis, and not just us. There's a lot of agencies that embrace that. But it's disturbing, it's concerning on a lot of levels, and my immediate things that I'm going to tell clients right away is you're going to have to push more money into the table for paid, and if you don't believe it, let's take a look at this report. But the last thing I'll say, I don't think SEO's dead. It's not. I don't think it's ever going to die. I think search engine optimization, you got to remember, YouTube's a search engine. Amazon's a search engine. So people just think SEO and Google, they're together, they're synonymous. No, there's other search engines out there, so it's not dying. But I just don't think it has the relevance that it had at one point. And I think what this does is really put a cap on a lot of the talking heads out there that like to just constantly talk about SEO and all the proper ways to do it. And you spend thousands of dollars in these forums and thousands of dollars on these trade shows to hear all the SEO pundits talk about it. 39 to 41%, people. That's all you're ever going to get from it right now, and it's only going to come back. It eventually get to the point where maybe you're getting 10 to 15% of your traffic from organic clickable traffic, which brings us all the way back to where this world is going in marketing, which is what? Paid. And which is going to bring us back to the true thing of where we need to be is what is your purple cow, Seth Godin, and what is your creative message coming through, and is your creative team kicking ass? So it's kind of a bit of a rant, but it's concerning to me being an SEO guy at my core for close to 2 decades now. But these numbers are concerning, and if you do have SEO and you're investing a lot of money in SEO, sit down, talk to your team, really dig into your traffic, and ask yourself a question. Is our SEO campaign not working, we're losing traffic, or are we just becoming part of the industry where pieces of the island are kind of fading into the ocean, per se?
Yeah, I think there's, you brought up a lot of great points in there, but there's 3 specifically that I want to highlight. The first is just really quick. You mentioned YouTube as also a search engine, which it is. We know when it comes to video in particular, a lot of people will just go to YouTube first. I believe in Fishkin's report, I'll have to find the exact page, but I believe it. Go ahead, Josh.
Doesn't say, if you were saying out of all of the Google properties, YouTube is on that list.
Well, YouTube's not only on that list, I think it comprises, let me find the exact number, I believe it was 6% of all Google site traffic.
Yeah.
Is going to YouTube?
Is going to YouTube, yeah. Which, I mean, I think obviously makes sense. YouTube is like literally the biggest video search engine and
but they're only talking about actual going to Google, searching for something and pulling up a video, clicking the video tab. Mm-hmm. Well, these numbers don't talk about what's the second largest search engine in the world. Does anybody know?
But just Going to YouTube.
You got it. YouTube's the second largest search engine.
For some reason, I was thinking Amazon, but that's
no.
for
Well, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's number 3.
Because you could probably get just the same amount of what you want by just signing on to YouTube and making the same exact search you would search on Google. Now that people tend to now ask questions, and then when you ask the question on the YouTube search, a video will pop up.
Yeah.
That's relevant, and then it even links back to websites. So.
Yeah, and a final thing in that, I don't want to cut you off, but a final thing on this that I didn't see in here, and I want to see this because there's a lot of comments coming up. Actually, the interaction Rand Fishkin had with a lot of people on Twitter I thought was great, because the SEO community and a lot of the people, like starting with Rand Fishkin, going to a lot of different guys and girls who do this, these are really, really intelligent people who really, really know what they're talking about and have really steered the community in the right way. But the one thing I didn't see in here, and there's 2 really major points that are critical, is the rise of voice search way larger than we think with the non-clickable Google, 50% search results? Like, is it? Everyone's like, well, it's coming, or is it here? And we just don't realize, like, shit, you walk out your window and you're surrounded.
So there's a Greg Sterling report I was thinking of having us talk about for the show that I cut for some other stuff, because this would have been like a show for a couple weeks ago. But he talks about a report showing that voice search, while growing and still kind of small, is not getting the adoption nearly as high as you would think it would be, meaning that it's not growing in the exponential way that everybody thought it might grow, which would be massive, like, consumer adoption of the smart speakers and stuff, but that it is still has sizable a sizable effect, and it's still worth thinking about when you're doing SEO. I'll link you the report, and I'll link it in the blog description, because it's really interesting, because it's probably the only report I've seen that isn't talking about how great voice search is. It's kind of bringing in some numbers to sort of paint a different picture. So I'll link in the blog description. Also send it to you.
I want to see it because
it's definitely interesting.
Because I want to know where that's at, because I think it's larger than what it's speaking. Because if I'm correct, I really don't know how we're tracking voice search on certain things of analytics. I know that there's ways of which you're on something, hey Siri, and Siri pulls something up, which, by the way, don't discount the rise of Siri, which has been going on for the better part of almost a decade now. So there's a lot of factors that are factoring into that. But the last thing that was mentioned on a Twitter comment with Rand Fishkin, it's not in here, it's not on my notes, but I remember it, was that there was there should be a concern about non-clickable SEO, but if there is a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe it is voice search, which kind of brings SEO back into the light a little bit, but maybe we're looking at it a little differently. But I think the thing you have to think about, though, is that when you are doing, if there's non-clickable searches, I said this to a prospective client today. I was watching a Frank Sinatra documentary, and I know he was married to Ava Gardner. I'm like, when did Ava Gardner die? And I searched it on Google, and I didn't click anything, and there it was. And we spoke about that when we bought everybody and talked about this. So that was one thing where I'm not searching whether you're not clicking. Who won the Game 7 World Series 1965? You're not clicking, you're just looking at it. So a lot of it is a question and answer type thing that you do have to write off on that. What's concerning, though, in this Twitter exchange that Rand Fishkin had was, and I forget the individual it was with, somebody who's pretty well known, it was, well, how does the big companies play into this? And the big companies are going to play into this because of the way their sites are ranking and because of some of the content they can put on there, which, I'll be honest, if you're a medium to small size company, unless it's a longer tail search keyword, it's going to be harder and harder to try to grab any of that non-clickable, quote unquote, invisible traffic, because of certain ways in which Google rank larger companies in the way they mark up their pages and so forth. So in a nutshell, I think all of it is, it's concerning. Yeah,
I mean, in addition to your points, I think, we've talked about multiple times on the show and even in the former podcast, Comexis Cast, rich snippets, featured snippets. We probably had 4 or 5 shows specifically on them, the way that they're changing. And at the end of the day, we obviously don't know how Google's algorithm pulls them, but we do know that they're looking for very specific answers to questions that are easily digestible in a sentence or 2 or something like that. So I agree with you, the point you brought up, which is, at the end of the day, you might have to start SEOing your content and creating content that is more question-answer based, because you might end up being able to pull some of that non-click traffic to your site.
Yeah, well, we're optimizing sites right now for certain types of questions.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're trying to grab the voice search, So, but here's everything kind of summed up. we're literally in the weeds talking about SEO. But I think people have to understand that search engine optimization, as important as it is just a part in the buyer's journey, and it's in the consideration phase. And you could potentially say that it's a little bit in the purchase stage. People are like, oh, SEO for awareness. If you are at a point of searching for something, you are no longer becoming aware of something. You know of something, and you're looking at different service providers or companies that are providing that solution. So you know your pain point. SEO is not an awareness stage tactic. It is not even an advocacy stage tactic unless you're leaving a review and that's ranking on Google and so forth. And it's not even really in a retention stage thing. It fits within the 5 silos of the buyer's journey. It's heavily and dominantly in the consideration phase. There's a part of it in the purchase phase. And I think if you step back and look at this and you look at the whole forest and not the trees, you say to yourself, yeah, SEO is important, but for me to think that this is my entire marketing campaign, that's crazy. That's what you should pull from this report and be like, it's not the end of the world, but just understand that you need to build up the rest of your marketing silo to really, really start engaging with today's buyer. So that's kind of what I pull from the report.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. The only final thing I wanted to mention was we also talked about image optimization in particular a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Google search results beginning to show picture thumbnails, especially on mobile. So just one more thing to keep in mind, one more reason why you should be adding alt tags to your images, obviously to help you stand out in the search. Josh, you have any final thoughts before we close this one out?
Nope.
All right. Thank everybody for tuning in to today's episode of The Buyer's Journey. Check us out on Comexis.com, YouTube, and anywhere you can get your podcasts. And please follow us on Twitter at @buyers_journey. Thanks for tuning in.